Welcome to the Firm Report, the show where we pull back the curtain on what it really takes to build and grow a successful law practice. Each week, we'll be talking with attorneys, marketing pros, and operational specialists from law firms around the country. We'll dig into real stories, smart strategies, and the practical tips that can help you grow your firm and serve your clients better. Let's get into it.
Law is a regulated profession. There are significant and robust rules regarding how you can market a law firm. Hiring a generalist copywriter or content creator to create content for a law firm marketing campaign is playing with fire. You got to make sure it's accurate. That could be a bar complaint. It could even be a malpractice lawsuit if a current client relied on bad information on your website to make a decision. It's also got to be compliant with the rules of advertising in your jurisdiction. I mean, in most jurisdictions, you can't say you're a specialist or an expert unless you're board certified. You know, it's one of those things that you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. You don't even know to think the word expert might be off limits. But it's funny to me that I'm noticing that more things are changing, the more they're staying the same. I recently saw something. There was a study on the overlap of organic results to AI citations. And in your money or your life fields, like law or medicine or healthcare, it's like a 75% overlap. In other words, we're still playing the SEO game most of the time, right? To get into the AI results. So I'm kind of taken aback to like, things are crazy and changing and in flux. But it seems that the marketing guidance is what it was a year ago to some extent.
Welcome to the Firm Report with Zach Hoffman, and we have our guest David Arato with us today. David, why don't you give yourself a proper introduction as to what you do?
Hey, Zach, thanks a lot for having me. I'm David Arato. As you mentioned, the founder of Lexicon-Legal Content. We create SEO-optimized, jurisdictionally specific and accurate marketing content for law firms and law firm marketing agencies throughout the country and Canada.
And Canada?
Yeah, that's right.
Anything in the UK or just US and Canada?
Never done anything in the UK. We briefly had a client in Australia, but the time zone proved to be too difficult.
Understood. So I take it if the time zone is too difficult, so do you meet with your clients? Do you have regular consultations with your clients?
We do some synchronous communication. This is also about a decade ago, and things have pretty much, they've changed significantly since then.
Hyper evolved, right? That's right.
That's right.
As a prior conversation I had, I said after the cloud cleared after COVID. So it's I think there's a lot of the world has changed hyper rapidly in the past like 3-4 years, where a lot of expectations are like how people do business is just, I think, forever changed after that, the early 2020s. Which is,
absolutely, no doubt, man, no doubt.
For sure. So we're talking a little bit offline, and I know you went to law school, but you're not a lawyer.
That's
correct. Speak a little bit to that?
Sure. Well, I graduated law school in 2009, and as I was studying for the bar, I started writing content on a freelance basis just to make ends meet, make some extra money. And I quickly realized that this was a growth industry. Keep in mind, this is 2009. This is 15 years ago, 16 years ago. I realized there's a huge market that was being underserved for both law firms directly who needed qualified content writers who understood SEO and digital marketing, and also marketing agencies were having a lot of trouble sourcing quality content regularly, which, as I'm sure you're aware, you need to rank websites these days. So with that realization, I started Lexicon and haven't looked back.
That's awesome. And definitely, from a perspective of, I guess, just general content to AI content to specialized content professional, where's the rubber meet the road, I guess, from like a specialized legal content professional aspect?
Sure. As you're well aware, law is a regulated profession. There are significant and robust rules regarding how you can market a law firm. So in hiring a generalist copywriter or content creator to create content for a law firm marketing campaign is playing with fire. You got to make sure it's accurate. That could be a bar complaint. It could even be a malpractice lawsuit if a current client relied on bad information on your website to make a decision. It's also got to be compliant with the rules of advertising in your jurisdiction. I mean, in most jurisdictions, you can't say you're a specialist or an expert unless you're board certified. And I don't think generalists, it's one of those things that you don't know what you don't know. You don't even know to think the word expert might be off limits. So that is why I think I'm answering your question. I think that's why specialized marketing agencies, content marketing agencies like us exist.
Understood. And I guess from like a perspective of like legalese or like, having a more advanced understanding, just like specifically from the legal content, perspective, what's the deepest in like depth you've gone on a piece of content? I have to ask as a marketer, have you had a client that's like, I want to be the biggest authority in mesothelioma in this specific region or in some type of contamination? I want to be, if you're going after these Camp Lejeune cases, I want to be seen as like the through and through expert. I mean, I guess from a perspective and from being a marketer myself, I'm curious, what's been the deepest rabbit hole that you've been funded to go pursue on behalf of a client from like a niche perspective, and like really, digging the rabbit hole. So when Google or these LLM models go and look at a website that client's sourced, like, and this goes beyond injury MVA because there's so many people competing after that. But then if you look at like specific niches, what would you say, or where have you been that's gone deep into that journey?
That's a really difficult question to answer, as we've been in business for so long. We've had, we've created tens of thousands of pieces of content and worked with hundreds of law firms and dozens of marketing agencies. I'll answer in a roundabout way. Following the trends in content marketing and what Google was choosing to surface, or what the algorithm, I should say, was choosing to surface over the decades, there was a time, I'd say 2016, 2017, 2018, mid-teens, that Google seemed to be rewarding really in-depth, long-form content, the kind of content a human being is never going to read. And I remember one of the marketing agencies, well-known marketing agency with great results, was ordering from us 10,000-word pieces of car accident content, right? And in order to go that deep in, for example, the Dallas car accident attorney page, you're peeling back every layer of the onion. You're not saying that what to do after a car accident. You're talking about common causes of car accidents. Then you're getting the law, comparative negligence. What is negligence itself? What is duty? Like, again, the onion, peeling back every layer, basically writing a legal treatise on negligence law in the context of car accidents in order to rank a page in a competitive market. We also have done some pretty deep dives in some more esoteric areas, trademark, patent litigation, IP. Also, when you get those big mass tort campaigns going, often the attorneys or the marketing agencies are trying to strike while the iron's real hot. So next thing you know, you're building on a 200-page website on vaginal mesh in a week just to get to market first and be the authority on that topic.
And as a marketer, and just, I guess, the guy who's tied into data, what have you seen as a results with that, or like how's it worked for the clients?
We've gotten great results. We've gotten great results over the years. Typically, our marketing agency partners are the ones keeping the metrics. So we are getting secondhand information. This is working and this is not working. But what was working, interestingly enough, even 2-3 years ago, a bomb was dropped on the marketing field in late 2022 with the release of ChatGPT. The things that were working pre-2023 are not working the same way anymore.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've seen it where basically a website that might have been SEOing or doing optimization for the past 5-10 years, where you see successes, you almost have to go through and rewrite a lot of the content of yesterday. And it's, I always say Google's checking the oil in a lot of situations. A lot of people get really frustrated when they make like a major algorithm change, but the fact is like they're making sure if you're driving that car, you can go get the oil changed and that there's somebody at the driver's seat, Yeah,
that's a really good analogy. I love that, especially with these AI overviews, right? Like they're now surfacing content above the paid results, above the organic results, and it's more obviously natural language and responsive directly to the user query. So like what that's done to us is, it kind of feels like optimizing for featured snippets 2.0. Don't bury the lead, answer the question right away, use header tags, FAQ format, et cetera, right? Like it feels like we're hyper optimizing for featured snippets.
Hyper optimizing for feature snippets. I could see that in a way. It's definitely, definitely. I'd say, like I said, this environment, it's moving quickly. Google is seeing things in their data. You must assume as a result of like GPT's impact on the marketplace and other LLMs that people are like, oh, you don't search this one. Like, I typically, I'm a GPT user. I fished into Claude. There's a number of other ones that people, put on my radar or talk about, but I know where I'm searching. And then it's interesting because a Google search I did a couple months ago to kind of like draw my baseline of Google being irrelevant at the period of time has completely changed as a result in a period of 60 days, because the result was that much richer off of GPT that I was like, if Google doesn't make a change like quickly, like there's nobody going to be searching there. But I think they've made a lot of evolutions in the past, in the past couple months, where it's just like it's night and day as to what the Google results even look like or feel like.
Don't you feel that Google is trying to give you the best of both worlds a little bit? So you get the top above the fold AI overview the way you would in ChatGPT or Claude.
Yeah.
But then you still get your 10 blue links underneath the paid ads. And then often you get your AI overview citations on the right. So I feel like it's turning into a hybrid model, at least as it sits right now. I know I haven't played much with the Google AI mode. I'm just talking about the AI overviews. It feels like they're trying to integrate that experience into the traditional Google ecosystem and experience.
Yeah, they've done a lot in a lot of respects in my book. From my viewpoint, I mean, they were in an environment where they weren't putting like backlinks to their sources or
Yep.
even like hyperlinking within the AI overviews where they are now.
Yep.
They're also giving like more emphasis for those like results on the side there. I do think it's interesting that ChatGPT has started to drop like UTM source code on all of the traffic that they drive to a website within their platform. So like
Sure.
us as webmasters can see within a Google Analytics platform that, hey, we're actually getting traffic to this page from
Sure.
ChatGPT, which is a great knowledge base to have.
Sure.
So it's I think that the world's a changing. And here we are, in late 2025, and I just feel like even when this gets published or whatever the sands of time when somebody's listening to this, it's going to be
Old news.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot different, or it's going to evolve greatly because of just where we see things going. It's if you listen to like the Gary V's of the world or like some of these like tech influencers or innovators or visionaries, it's like you're going to be going into an augmented reality world. Or I still think the metaverse is cool. The metaverse never really caught on.
What happened to the metaverse?
It'll come.
It's coming.
Yeah, and if you don't know what it is, go check it out. But over in Crypto Voxel, but there's definitely, I believe that like that world of like NFTs, the blockchain, and the whole metaverse that like we haven't. Look, there's a whole generation growing up with these, right? And in front of these on a regular basis. And how they envision the world or like what they need, is very different. I mean, my child told me the other day when I was driving him to sports, he was like, Dad, he asked me how many employees we have and what we do and like a little bit more detail. And he was like, you need a bunch of robots working for you.
Welcome to the future, right?
I was like, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, if I was you, I'd have like dozens of robots like doing work and like helping your people out. And I'm like, it's kind of like where it's going, it's like, but it's very interesting to hear him say that because
sounds like you got a new COO on your hands right there.
Right. I mean, it's an interesting environment that we're in. If you look at where we're at in 2025, this current era, and just raising kids, you look at what they're being taught in school, or like some of the math problems or challenges they're getting. You're just like, all right, well, it's very interesting to see what they're being asked and why, and where this actually might have application in any theory of future resourcefulness as we go forward.
But it's funny to me that I'm noticing that more things are changing, the more they're staying the same. I recently saw something. Bright Edge did a study. I think it was released last week. Did you happen to see this? It was a study on the overlap of organic results to AI citations. And in your money or your life fields, like law or medicine or healthcare, it's like a 75% overlap. In other words, we're still playing the SEO game most of the time, right? To get into the AI results. So I'm kind of taking it back to like, things are crazy and changing and in flux. But it seems that the marketing guidance is what it was a year ago to some extent. The content marketing guidance,
Yeah, I mean, look, backlinks in my belief still work, right? So creating great content that like actually deserves an organic backlink, or whether you're brokering or getting those backlinks through other means, regardless, great content needs a backlink to actually be seen. Press releases still work. Other signals to search engines still work. It's, I think regardless of where you fall in the sands of time, there'll always be an algorithm, whether Google drops 100 out of it or not, there'll always be like a division, denominator or not. There's always going to be like an algorithm and like some formula behind how you get to those like top rankings.
For sure.
And I always find it interesting when you get a new client that might be in practice for like 2 or 3 years or 5 years. The realities and the rationality that they should essentially rank in the top 3 right away. But the fact is like, the other person that's been doing SEO potentially have been doing it for like 10 or 20 years. So there's a lot of like architecture backlinks. There's a lot of like front load investment that has to be done to essentially kind of like catch up or get to those levels that, somebody that's been in the market for 20 years is actually attained.
So I want to ask you what you're seeing with this. Yesterday, we published a piece targeting AIO for law firms, getting law firms into the AI results.
Yeah.
Submitted to Search Console about noon. 3 o'clock, it's showing up number 2 in the search results. And last night, it's showing up in the AI overviews. To me, that rate of indexing is crazy. Are you seeing the same thing on your end?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing indexing that's happening fairly rapidly. And then whether it sticks or not is also like another question, right? So check that same result in like 2 or 3 weeks and see if it's still there. I mean, there's definitely, there's a lot of fluidity in results these days. I find just the evolution of platforms has been very interesting. So in my journey of just being a marketer for 20 plus years, I've done a lot of reputation management / like brand management. So let's just say some savory individual is accused of doing something or whatever it may be, right? And at the end of the day,
what's that? You got to bury it.
you got to bury it, right? So it's like, how do you bury things? At least in yesteryears, you get it onto the second page of Google, or you just kind of like push it beyond where it is today, or you just basically, it's not necessarily burying it, right? It's, I never call it burying it because that's not really what you're doing, right? You're telling the information that really people should be able to find, and you're telling like the positive story and the positive skew of the story. So you're manipulating the results to essentially, go towards the good, go towards the current, and not necessarily, it's like what's the, what was published a year ago or 6 months ago or whatever, even a week ago. You kind of like hit the sands of time really quickly. So that being said, like the Google results have like a few really like dynamic standpoints in my eyes. That's when you go up to the top search bar and you push the result and you push like, it gives you that first drop down. And then when you put that search query in, then you also push space bar. It gives you like a different dynamic juxtapoint of like what the relationships are. So I've always found that those are very like fluid. And then Google still shows this related search block at the bottom, where if it's actually a search block that people actually care about, it'll typically have like 8 related snippets. If it's not like that big in their index, it might have like 0 relationships, 2 or 3 relationships. I always find that those are like the things that are kind of like locked in the sands of time. And like the biggest, like I would say like A/B to see this is if you go and you search for like in today's era, it would be, essentially like Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, and see like, because they're the last, presidential election. If you see like what the difference is in the results, it has that whole dynamic aspect, the sands of time of like what's like kind of like locked in. But I guess where I'm going with this is also the fluidity of results, or the fluidity of influencing a consumer as to what they believe isn't what it used to be, right?
Sure.
Like if you look at like how people were influenced during a Obama era of winning an election, it was based off of Google. And if you look at what won Trump's election recently, it was podcasts, social media, and I don't know that his base really cared what Google said.
Sure. We're all in our information silos, right?
Yeah. So we're in a lot of information silos. I honestly, for the first time, had like a user personal experience where I was really convinced that I was amongst an audience or crowd or population that probably never searches Google or doesn't even know it exists anymore.
Sure. Wow.
So I think that there is an entire aspect of the population that won't necessarily be going to a search engine in 2025, 2026, beyond to find the details or information they're looking for. And it's like, okay, well, where do they go? Do they go to social media? Like, do they respond to a social media ad? Do they go to an LLM? Do they go to search function? And at the end of the day, as just a human or just a person, I think the overarching question that marketers have to ask, or like business decision makers or just decision makers have to ask, it's a really simple question. It's why, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're investing or doing something and you think you're going to like crack the code, why, right? Like I always say to advertisers that are buying a lot of traditional media, I'm like, the NBA cannot get viewers right now. Like there is a true decline in authentic viewership for the largest platforms in our country.
Yeah.
Why do you think they're watching your TV ad on NBC and ABC versus watching the NBA game? Like, let's be real about it for like a second. Like, where is the audience? So
do you think that's an attribution problem?
It's not necessarily an attribution problem. Like the reality is like the secret to building brands is the reality is like building a brand is very important, right? And like, what does building a brand mean, right? Like I think a lot of marketers and advertisers don't necessarily ask like what building a brand means. Like they think that like building a brand means when somebody gets into this situation, they're going to go find me, right? Like building a brand is very loaded, because as somebody that's, right now our agency is specifically niched down to specializing in assisting law firms. But we've marketed for some of the largest organizations in the country and the world, where I could tell you for a fact their brands are so strong, they can literally market anything. When I mean like anything, I mean anything, and be successful at it.
I love that idea.
That is an aspect of, that is true branding. Like I didn't represent McDonald's. I'm not going to say who we have represent, but I'll just tell you, if McDonald's were to decide to sell any food, drink, or whatever they may want, that they would probably be fairly successful at it versus anybody just like entering the food and beverage industry, right? Or Disney selling something regarding entertainment. Like they have a higher probability of like people actually engaging with what their platform is moving from a branding perspective. So
I love that.
I guess as marketers, when you're looking at branding or like positioning or specific like information seeking, and you look at like how people brand or position, it's being in the legal space or like marketing the legal space. Like I think sometimes, a lot of the lawyers and they're entitled to have fun, right? But the reality is like, it's a very serious topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as soon as you kind of cross that line of like seriousness to like fun comedy, how do you come back? Or do you have enough dollars to come back? Or is like 20% of your message fun and comedy and 80% of it is, it's
I think it depends on the practice area a little bit too, right? Like, where I see a lot of I see a lot of whimsical advertising. I'm going to call it whimsical, in the personal injury space. So I often drive between St. Louis and Breckenridge, where I live in Breckenridge, I go from St. Louis, and Jungle Law advertises in the Kansas City market, and so into Kansas and outside of Kansas City on the Missouri side, and they've got billboards of their founders swinging on vines, literally in Tarzan outfits and stuff like this. And they've been doing it for years, which to me means that it's working, because if it wasn't working, why would you keep dumping money into it? I've seen also Top Dog Law. I was just leaving Scottsdale and I saw a poster of James Helm with the huge blow up cell phone and the bag of money pointing at it, right? Like, this is not serious lawyer advertising, but it's working and it's getting people to pick up the phone. I've never seen marketing or advertising like that in, for example, the criminal defense space, where I think often there's more on the line psychologically for the client, right? Like, I might go to jail rather than, and I'm not saying an accident is not a big deal, but unless you're talking about wrongful death or a traumatic brain injury or catastrophic injury, the marketing seems to be focused on how much money are we going to get you for your injuries in an ethical way. But what I'm saying is, in that practice area, I've seen more long-term sustained advertising that is less serious than in family law, criminal defense, bankruptcy, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
just an observation, anecdotal on my part.
No, I think it's very interesting that you say that, and I do kind of enjoy where this conversation's going. But there's I would say, like, Top Dog, like, definitely, I think there's comical, like, satirical aspects to his marketing advertising. Sure. But if you do go check him out and you study who he is and how he's positioned himself,
he's a serious lawyer.
He's a serious lawyer. He's got a serious story of, it's no secret that he had an addiction problem, that they went to recovery. There's a lot of, like, humanistic components to Top Dog Law that if he gets you to search for him or find him, that he will win a lot of conversations, right?
Absolutely. That's a really good point. Yeah.
There's there's a comical aspect, and, like, even like this Jungle, I've never even heard of him, but I might go check it out.
Get on I-70 in the middle of the country and you'll see him. You can't.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that, just kind of like the angle that they're coming from. But there's a lot of, like, interesting aspects, I would say, of, like, big firm marketing that I've, like, seen, or that I always find, like, kind of, like, interesting, of, like, crux points of, like, when you see these, like, vanity domain names or these hypothetical brands, like, and then you also see the For the People and the Morgan & Morgan,
for
like,
sure,
what you do, right? And I think, like, the challenge for a lot of legal marketing and advertisers right now is, regardless of who you are, unless you're Sweet James in Los Angeles, like, you're probably being outspent by John Morgan in your given market. Right. Like, I've looked at data from every market of, like, media buyers, and I'll tell you, I think Sweet James is the only one outspending Morgan & Morgan in any one given market.
Is that right? I believe it.
And the Sweet James conversation, it's a very serious conversation, right? Like, some of their social media, like, yes, will get you, like, involved in comical, but, like, if you look at his billboards, they're like, and I always tell, like, clients with, like, billboards and, like, some advertising, it's like, it's like the KISS principle. It's like, keep it simple, stupid. Like, it's like, the reality is, it's like, that's what you have to do. It's like, when you look at Sweet James' billboard, like, whatever you think of it, it's got his face, it says seriously injured, call us. Like, and it's got, I think his number's like 809 million or whatever it is, like, strong. They have a strong vanity phone number, which I think is definitely a great asset that a lot of firms kind of, like, overlook, or say, like, hey, but I have this number that's like 8 blah blah blah, call free. Like, nobody uses a touch tone to, like, look up letters and understand. Like, if you can get a dominant repeater or, like, something with a lot of zeros in it, like, I think that's like the holy grail in phone numbers right now.
Ross Salino was I was at a conference earlier in the week, and Ross Salino gave a talk, and basically the takeaway I took from it was their success in the New York market was based on 888-888-8888 and their jingle, and that was it. He was like, that's what we did. He was a strong believer in repeater numbers to this day.
Still tells that number. Who owns Call 8s right now? Is it him? I don't think so. I don't know.
I'm not sure.
I think it's kind of sits in a vault somewhere, but,
yeah,
but there's, anyway, not going to go down into that conversation, but so there's definitely those phone numbers. Yeah. I think they have a lot of vanity aspects of it. The other thing that I said is, like, I think with a lot of these, like, bigger firms, it's very interesting how there's still, like, a person's name involved, even, like, For the People, as much as they spend in marketing. Like, Morgan & Morgan is definitely still, like, the conversation, like, juxtapoint of, like, a lot of the dialogue and what he's representing. And I think that's, like, an arch that a lot of, like, firms necessarily aren't, like, catching. He also has a badass domain portfolio, like avogados.com, classaction.com. Like, he has some of the top URLs out there. So he's made, I would say, some very effective investments in, like, really kind of, like, controlling the conversation.
Absolutely.
It's, very, very interesting in that perspective. But I guess, and, like, the content that we were talking about, and just, like, content stories, content's not necessarily always limited to, like, SEO or just, like, the limitations of writing, right? And it's
totally. That's just
I also think, like, kind of like you were saying early in the conversation, like, content has a misinterpretation of, like, volume being, like, something that's critical versus I think what an aspect of like the search engines or Google is looking for is like quality
100%.
over quantity.
I'm seeing this hub and spoke model still working pretty well. Like have a pillar page, the clusters around a pillar page where you create a robust piece of practice area page content, and you feed into that page with blog content that touches ancillary. Again, I'm going to go back to the onion analogy, like peel back the layers. What else can we talk? What can we drill down deeper into? I'm going to actually tie this into the Morgan & Morgan conversation. They're outspending everyone. You're absolutely right. We work with a friend of mine that my wife went to law school with. We work with this firm, small family firm in St. Louis market. Morgan & Morgan enters the market about 2-3 years ago. He calls me. He's like, Dave, what are we going to do? They're going to outspend us. We're not going to get any more personal injury cases. So what we started doing is targeting long tail blog projects or keywords rather in his project. And sure, Morgan & Morgan's all over TV and they're owning St. Louis car accident lawyer, but they're not owning things like, what should I do if I was injured in a car accident in Webster Groves, right? And we were able to compete on terms like that while being outspent by targeting the high intent long tail keywords that were hyper local. And I'm speaking to quality over quantity, right? When you're really targeting a legal consumer's, A, their search terms, B, their intent, right? Like hyper local, hyper personalized to a person in that St. Louis market who is searching a term that involves local landmarks, maybe a local hospital, local police departments, whatever it may be. You're able to compete with the spend by hyper targeting long tail keywords.
Oh yeah, for sure. I would agree with that. But I'd also say like we're going into an era and a time right now too, where what's interesting is as Morgan & Morgan does like continue to like control the spigot in a lot of ways, or what I would say to a lot of marketers and advertisers out there, like just be thankful they're in the market because they create awareness for the topic and the situation.
Really
which is why I would strongly encourage, if you're a marketer and advertiser out there spending dollars, your conversation just has to be serious. This isn't like it's not a whimsical incident where your loved one was in a major car accident.
Totally.
Paralyzed. Like they're not responding. Like if they have a major case, they're probably not replying to like comedy as much as you.
That's a really good point. Yep.
And even like Morgan & Morgan, like I say, like if they're controlling the fuss and the spigot and you start to study their marketing and advertising right now in an era where there's just noise in the street as to like how the market's evolving or what's essentially happening, they have gotten a lot more serious in their dialogue.
Sure.
Like Mama Morgan is on the commercial ads, like talking about like, oh, it was so concerning when my kids got in the car and what might happen as a result.
Yep.
John Morgan has commercials now where he's talking about his brother's injuries and accidents and like the relationship, like how that influenced him to get into like the legal space in general. So I guess like my message out there to like marketers, lawyers, and advertisers out there is like, there is like an aspect of like serious dialogue in the conversation. And if you don't believe me, like study what's going on out there in the market and how, one of the guys controlling the market, the conversation went from like, just get to know us conversation to like, let's dial this into like how serious the situation is and why we're here to help you.
Totally makes sense.
And I just feel like a lot of marketers forget that they control the local market, right? And like local wins in a lot of ways. That's how Walmart became the largest convenience store in the country. It's like going into local markets where they can control the conversation, control the distribution, control the pricing.
Absolutely.
And I believe that a lot of, small to medium sized law firms still have the aspect, like if they just dial in and like focus in on their local markets. I think Mike Moore's law firm does an effective job on it. Just like communicating with the community that like we're here in our local market and not really worry about, the big dialogue that, like I said, it's as a marketer and advertiser, it's been in a number of markets. Like it's very good what he's doing in the marketplace, because at the end of the day, people that didn't know that somebody might be liable for a situation or that like they could get compensation as a result of an injury now know as a result of John Morgan.
And that case isn't necessarily going to Morgan. He's creating a market for the entire industry in a given market.
Correct. He is what they call the tide that's raising the water that's raising all tides, and like as a result creating more opportunities for litigation and more awareness and more empowerment to the consumer to actually do something as a result of an injury, an incident, or a wrongdoing, whether it be like contamination. Like he is seriously guiding and creating opportunities for a lot of law firms out there. And I think if a lot more law firms embrace that from an aspect, and even the challenge with being such a large advertiser is you don't necessarily have as much control over your dialogue on like a macro community. Like you're more communicating on a macro scale than you are on a micro scale.
Sure.
And I think if more, law firms that might feel quote unquote threatened, like try to control the micro communication a lot, more, they can exponentially win when it comes into a market.
I think that's a better way of saying what I was trying to say earlier about content marketing.
And from like going into just like what aspects though, or like the
No,
local?
what I mean is you're talking about the micro communications, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I'm analogizing that with narrow forms of content marketing that are hyper localized, right? Like the big conversations happening, you're absolutely right. Like there's injuries occurring, you can obtain compensation for them, right?
Yeah.
But that gives, and I'm agreeing with you completely. That's giving the smaller firms an opportunity to control the conversation on the local level.
No, for sure. Definitely, David, the conversation's been awesome. Definitely appreciate you, being
My
on
pleasure
the
to you.
show.
It's been great. Yeah.
And being at Exalts, and we really work on driving results for our clients. I always have to ask this to our guests, like, what is like the major crux point, major thing that like drives the results that you've been able to produce over the years, and just even whether it's personal or business, like what drives your results?
Our results as an agency, or our results for our clients?
Whatever, you wake up in the morning and your mantras are, whatever drives you, like what drives
Totally.
your results?
I think on both, to answer both versions of that question, like I think it's that personal connection in the content we create. We're trying to personally connect with the reader. And I think in business, I'm always trying to personally connect with the people we're doing business with to understand, like, what is, this is business. We're solving problems. That's fundamentally what it is. Like, what problem can I solve for you? Whether we're representing our law firm client as a content marketing agency, what problem are we solving for their client? Or what problem are we solving for our agency clients or for our law firm clients? To really, truly make a personal connection to understand where there's a pain point and how we can fix that pain point.
That's awesome.
Or at least facilitate fixing it.
For sure.
Yeah.
And well, definitely thank you for your time, and thank you, for being a guest. If people want to find you, David, like where's the best place?
We're all over social media. It's David Arato, Arato. Company is Lexicon Legal Content, www.lexiconlegalcontent.com. You can always email me directly at david@lexiconlegalcontent.com.
Awesome. Well, David, I definitely, once again, appreciate you taking your valuable time to be with us today. And thank you to all our listeners, listening to the Firm Report. And this is Zach Hoffman with Exalts, signing off, and I appreciate the time.
That's it for today's episode of The Firm Report, brought to you by Exalts, a full-service digital marketing agency helping law firms reach new heights. If you enjoyed the conversation, make sure to like, subscribe, and share the show with someone who'd find it valuable. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.